live on the YouTube. And as soon as I mute the YouTube, we will go live on the main face bag. Don't let them know I call them that.
So many clicks.
There we go. Lots of clicks. There we go. And transition, unmute, and we are good. So good morning, everyone. This is 10 Minutes of Tennis. Hey, I always say, this is Sean with Go Tennis and the Atlanta Tennis Podcast. We are here with world-renowned tennis coach. I don't know if I actually have permission to call you that, but I like calling you that, Justin. World-renowned tennis coach Justin Yeo, the Aussie in Puerto Rico. I have a friend who calls himself America in España. So he's the American living in Spain. You're the Aussie in Puerto Rico.
My buddies in Pennsylvania call me the Ferner. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Ferner. It's spelled F-U-R-N-E-R. Ferner.
Ferner. Yeah, exactly. That's a good Alabama kind of talk. I like that. But today we are talking about what player style are you and what game style fits your abilities. So Justin Yeo, that sounds like two questions to me. So let's start with the first. What player style are you? Are there really people out there that don't already know?
Yeah, look, that's a pretty detailed question to nail in 10 minutes, but I'll do it the fastest we can. I'm going to quote some Mike Burrell here because Mike Burrell is fantastic at the little ones. What he has recognized, and I've been saying this for probably 2 decades as well, is there's a bit of personality behind your game style. And that's where a lot of players don't get it right. And we can sort of use examples, Rafa and Federer, one very quiet, one very out there. I used to ask kids, would you rather sit in a corner and read a book? Or would you rather go watch a movie? You know, and you can sort of get an idea of personality, you know, that they're the quiet one and this one's the rowdy, wild one. And you have to work with the personality sometimes to help the game style. Because if you try to get them nice and calm and just move the ball around and be passive, right, they might be a Rafa and you're not utilizing their strength of their personality. So that's a good one for little ones to start to identify how to get the right game style around their personality. Then you need to put them in a competitive situation and see whether they like to attack or whether they like to stay on the baseline and rally the ball. Their mind, maybe their mental ability isn't right there yet, so they actually struggle and start to make errors quickly. So you have to try to force and work with the strength of what they have. I've seen that a lot in juniors, you know. So juniors, they, you know, get within 4 shots and they make, you know, error or winner. Then you've got to start to structure things better in those 4 because that's sort of where their mental state or their attention span is. Whereas some will say, well, you need to get them to hit 50 balls. Well, their eyes and their maturity won't allow them to hit 50 balls. So the quality of striking and the style of play is not going again with their personality. So, or where they're at, obviously. And then you see kids that win a lot of tournaments that can play the game of chess and they just sit there mentally and you know, visually can see everything and will just eat people alive all day long. So anyway, that's on the junior side. It takes a lot. You got to talk with your coach. You got to do a lot of assessment. You got to do it all of an analysis. As the player grows, more analysis. But if I was put my coach development hat on, junior coach development hat from Australia, the first thing I would say for most coaches with kids is start to work with them on understanding how they can learn as many game styles as possible so that they learn that the game right now is the game that's going to be again evolved in 10 or 15 years. So you have to start to give them some of the tools that's going to give them a chance in 10, 15 years. If not, you can't teach them like their 80s with a windscreen wiper forehand. Ain't going to work. You know, so, you know, right now we're seeing everything's built on time, taking away time, taking the ball on the rise, getting to the net. So the sooner the coaches start to teach them those stuff, the more advantages they have in those game styles. Flip it the other way, and we go to a 40-something-year-old, or 30-something-year-old, or 50-something-year-old. They need to look at their physical capabilities and then say, all right, what can I handle? What can't I handle? Because some of them, like myself, I'm 50 now, and I'm reinventing my physicality. Didn't realize my hips were so bad, and a trainer twice a week is destroying my hips. But when he's doing it, what he's proven is it's not a degenerative thing. I just haven't trained them or strengthened them or given them mobility, and because of that, I'm reinventing, and I can actually run further, drive cross court harder. Serve has improved a lot. There's a lot of things. So, you have to weigh up your options. When you get to a later stage in life, you have to start to realize what you can do physically to play a certain game style. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And as an adult, I'm going to ask the similar question I seem to ask when we have these conversations, which is, okay, we have the ability to look at a young player or a beginner and ask these questions early, but let's say we're asking it late. Like you say, I might have to physically stick with what I'm stuck with. Ooh, I like that.
Yep.
Stick with what you're stuck with. But in that case, it's a scenario where I've got to figure out what I have. So those are my abilities, and stick with that game style. But if that game style doesn't fit my personality, I've got this strange cognitive dissonance going on, like asking me personally, Sean, the player, to hit 50 balls in a row. I'm just going to walk off the court.
Yep.
I'm bored. I'm just boring myself into leaving the court. I'm going to hit a drop shot eventually. It's just how my brain works. But the more I play the other style, the more my personal style works well. So it's a combination of, like you say, bring in multiple styles, being able to do many of them. So my question being, how many styles are there? Are there just two? There's offensive and defensive. Is there, how many styles are there? 3, 4? Have we quantified that?
Yeah, I mean, we've quantified it. You can talk about an all-rounder, you can talk about an aggressive baseliner. I think that's pretty much what we've come down to. If you really look at the players these days, and these players nowadays have to have an all-round game. Because if they don't have a defensive slice or a cross-court winner, or even just to be able to hold a rally and come to the net. One of the things that Djokovic showed very obvious that no one really talks about is, I call it the opportunity world, where, a ball slightly inside the baseline, takes it early, moves backwards, waits for the opportunity, and then runs forward. So there's definitely all-round player is the way to go, and you've got to teach that as soon as possible. But for players of amateurs, I think you're right. I mean, if their physicality is a certain way, then they need to try to be an expert at the first 4 shots. And I don't think if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, we were all taught rally, keep the ball alive, get to the net, chip and charge, all of that stuff. But we were taught to hit a lot of balls, and there was never a purpose around 0 to 4 shots, like get it done, and get into patterns of going that way, then I'm going that way, just like shoot and pull 8 balls, right? You start to think about, I'm going to go that one, and then I'm going to go that one, then I'm going to go that one. We didn't do that a lot, or taught a lot in tennis. The 0 to 4 shots. I mean, Craig Shaughnessy has proved that the average point is 1 or 2 shots. If you look at the data, and even at the data, he's proven that 0 to 4 is where people need to be teaching themselves to do something. And I still see a lot of rallying, still see a lot of balls, and all you're putting is traffic and yards and miles on your body, when you really should be trying to work on structures and patterns.
Well, that leads us into next week, which is talking about patterns, singles versus doubles. If I've got a good pattern that works for me, if my kick serve to your backhand coming in, hitting a volley cross court on the ad side works really well for me, but doesn't work on the deuce side, I need to know that. And I think that suits my abilities as well. But if you don't have a nice kick serve, maybe that doesn't suit yours. So the player style doesn't work there. Justin Yeo, I appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks so much.
Yep. You're welcome. We off?
We're off.
I was going to say a final point would have been like Rafael Nadal. I mean, what he did is realized his physicality, he had to change his game style.
Yeah.
So, and you can't, like, that is the most obvious, best example you can think about for that kind of, I guess what we call evolving your game around your physicality.
Yeah, and it's an
It's
amazing
very
one. It's an amazing one because those guys, the clay court guys, have never lasted more than 5 to 7 years on tour. And he figured out, I mean, to win a Wimbledon, I mean, as a counterpuncher is one thing. All right, call Hewitt a one-off.
Yeah.
You're talking about a fast court player as a counterpuncher, but Nadal to figure that out and say, you know what, Uncle, I want to win Wimbledon. How do I do that? And Uncle didn't say, sorry, kid, you're a dirt rat.
Right.
Said, let's figure it out. Let's shorten the swing. Let's move forward. And yeah, that's a phenomenal example of
And the last
adaptability.
Yeah, his last 3 to 4 years, what he's done to change his game to get off the court 20 to 30% less court time. That is, I mean, we talk about GOATs. You know, to see someone evolve his game like that and still keep coming and keep playing. When I remember Uncle Tony had lunch with me in 2009 when he was basically, you know, going into a final after a fifth set against Verdasco the day before. And he had to go against Federer, and they all said, you won't beat Federer. And he beat him in 5 the next day.
No, I said he wasn't going to beat Federer. There's no reason to think that he would.
And Tony says, like, that morning when they warmed up, his feet were still sore and bleeding. His hands were sore and his wrists were sore against Verdasco. And he looked at Tony and said, you know, in 5-10 minutes, he's like, I don't know how I can do this. I'm sore. And Tony turned to him and just gave him the reverse psychology. Well, they said you'd never beat Federer. So in a final at the Australian Open, it's early part of the year, you know, it's just, you can't do it. So he warmed up for another 45 minutes and then beat Federer in 5. I mean,
yeah,
there's not many, like, I'm tired of hearing this whole GOAT thing, because those 3 guys, what they've done, the 3 of them, their records are just incredible, you know.
Yeah, the greatest of all time is a fun conversation, but it gets chippy. Like, people are emotional about it as opposed to it's a favorite. Like, greatest of all time at some level still is. There's a favorite. There's an emotional aspect to it.
Yeah, and you know, one of the topics I think, and I keep hearing the same topic. So maybe write this